Think about this for a second. For 70 years, she was probably the most famous woman on the planet, right? And yet, in many ways, we barely knew her. To really understand the life of Queen Elizabeth II is to understand our modern world. A story of massive, unbelievable change, all seen through the eyes of the one person who seemed to never change at all. And it all boils down to a single promise she made as a young woman.
This right here. This is the key. She said this on her 21st birthday, years before she had any idea she'd be queen so soon. And this one sentence, it wasn't just some nice phrase. It became the unwavering mission statement for her entire life. It's the code that unlocks everything she did for the next 7 decades.
But here's the crazy part. This life of service, this historic reign, it was never supposed to happen. Elizabeth was not born to be queen. Her path to the throne was a complete accident, the result of a huge family crisis that changed everything, forever.
So how did it all go down? Well, in 1936, her uncle, King Edward VIII, sparked a massive scandal. He chose to abdicate the throne so he could marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. This forced her shy, reluctant father to become King George VI. And just like that, at 10 years old, little Lilibet, as they called her, was suddenly next in line. Her destiny was sealed basically overnight.
And if you want to know where her famous sense of duty came from, you have to look at World War II. At just 14, she was on the radio comforting kids who had been evacuated from their homes. But later, she didn't just talk the talk. She literally rolled up her sleeves and joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service. She trained as a mechanic and a truck driver, becoming the very first female member of the royal family to be a full-time active member of the armed forces. A huge deal at the time.
And you can see how she really connected with people during these tough times. When she married Prince Philip in 1947, Britain was still recovering from the war and things were tight. So what did she do? Just like any other bride, she saved up her clothing ration coupons to help pay for her wedding dress. Can you imagine? It was a small thing, but it sent this huge message that she was in it with them.
And then, bam, 1952. The moment came, way sooner than anyone ever expected. She was on a royal tour in Kenya when she got the news. Her father had died. At just 25 years old, she went from princess to queen. There's that famous story that she climbed into a treetop hotel a princess, and the next morning she came down a queen. So there she is. At 25, her life of service truly begins. And the central question of her reign would really become this: how do you provide stability, a sense of constancy in a world that is just radically transforming, non-stop? Well, her 70 years on the throne were a masterclass in how to do exactly that. Her first big test came almost immediately with her coronation in 1953. The establishment, including Winston Churchill himself, was dead set against televising the ancient ceremony, but she insisted. She just knew instinctively that for the monarchy to survive in the modern age, people had to see it. It was an absolutely brilliant and modernizing move right out of the gate. And when you step back and look at the scale of change she presided over, it's just staggering. I mean, she inherited a world of the British Empire and steam power. She left behind a world of social media and Zoom calls. She didn't just witness all this change, she was the constant thread running through a complete reinvention of society itself. And you can see her adapting, decade after decade. She embraces TV in the 50s. She oversees the massive transition from empire to Commonwealth in the 60s. She sent her first email, get this, from a military base in 1976. She launched the first royal website in the 90s, and of course, by the 2020s, she was holding meetings via video call. Always evolving, always moving with the times.
And through all of this, she was the ultimate confidant. Every week, she met with 15 different prime ministers, from Churchill, who was old enough to be her grandfather, all the way to Liz Truss, just 2 days before she died. Yet, she maintained what's called a strict constitutional silence. We never ever knew her political opinions. Her job was to advise, to encourage, and to warn, but always in private.
Okay, but let's be real. It wasn't all smooth sailing and garden parties. Her reign had some incredibly difficult moments. The institution faced immense challenges, and it was her job to steer the ship through some really turbulent waters.
And no year was more turbulent than what she herself famously called her Annus Horribilis. That's Latin for horrible year. Now, for the Queen, who is so famously private and reserved, to use a phrase like that in a public speech, you just knew it had to be really bad. And oh boy, was it bad. 1992 was just a relentless series of blows. You had the collapse of 3 of her children's marriages, including the very messy, very public separation of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, and then, to top it all off, a devastating fire ripped through Windsor Castle, one of her homes. It was just one thing after another.
But perhaps the single greatest test of our entire reign came 5 years later, with the tragic death of Princess Diana in 1997. The monarchy was suddenly facing an unprecedented crisis. You had this global, modern outpouring of grief, and the public was demanding a show of emotion that was completely at odds with centuries of royal tradition.
Now at first, the family misjudged the public mood, and they were criticized for their silence. But then, the Queen did what she always did. She listened, and she adapted. She came back to London, she gave a live televised address, speaking not just as a queen, but as a grandmother. And that crucial act of empathy really helped to restore the public's faith.
As she entered the final chapter of her reign, her focus remained laser-sharp on that promise she made as a young woman. That commitment to duty, it never, ever wavered, right up to the very end. And I don't think any single image captures this dedication better than this one. In 2021, at the funeral of her husband, Prince Philip, after 73 years of marriage, she sat completely, utterly alone.
And here's the crucial part. She was the queen. She could have made an exception for herself, but she didn't. By following the exact same pandemic rules as everyone else in her country, this small, solitary figure in black became an incredibly powerful symbol of shared sacrifice and her own unwavering sense of duty.
And the sheer scale of that service, when you add it all up, is just breathtaking. 70 years on the throne, 4 massive jubilees, from the Silver Jubilee in the 70s to the historic Platinum Jubilee in 2022. It was a promise she made for her whole life, and she absolutely 100% delivered.
Her death in September 2022 really did feel like the end of an era. It was a moment of reflection for the entire world, a chance to look back on a single life that had managed to bridge the 20th and 21st centuries. And so we end right where we began, with this vow. She made it as a 21-year-old princess, and she fulfilled it until her final days as a 96-year-old monarch. She simply kept her promise.
Which leaves us with this one final thought. In a world like ours that is constantly shifting, where everything feels temporary, her life poses a really profound question for all of us. What is the true value of a constant?